Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and welcome to Muslim Network TV. And with me is
Professor Aminah Al-Deen. And we're mostly at the beginning laying the groundwork for what we hope will be not only an informative but an exciting program for you this evening.
Well, you're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, which covers the whole United States, north, south, east, west, red state and blue states. And we are in Canada and Mexico as well through Galaxy 19 satellite. You can also watch us on Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Roku, and a whole lot of other places, but also on our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. And this is an exciting time. Amna, thank you so much for being a co-host with me.
It's my honor. And you're right, it's exciting, it's depressing, it's unnerving, and a whole bunch of other adjectives I can't think of at the moment.
Right.
I would like to invite in our general conversation before our guests come on about certain issues, Ms. Sadia Sheikh, Samaya Sheikh, who is the director at Michigan State.
At Campus Vote Project, yep.
The Campus Voter Project. And we invited you, Samaya, because you compliment me with the youth and energy, and we can both take on Imam Malik, who's a little state.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
There you go.
Right. Well, President Trump claims victory and that elections are rigged and all of that. What's the score at this moment?
I have Biden at 260 something and Trump at 214, it looks like.
Yeah, this is interesting. The conservative media, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, and Politico, they're projecting 264 for Biden and for Trump 214. While the more liberal media like New York Times and Washington Post, or the fake media, quote unquote, they have it Biden at its lesser level. So it means if that is true, as conservative media is saying, so Biden is just 6 electoral votes away to win the presidency, or it means just he needs to win one of the 4 states which are remaining. But for Trump to remain president, he needs to win Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. All of those he needs to win. And to be fair, he is right now ahead in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina, not in Nevada. So if Nevada goes for Biden, Biden becomes the president because he's just 6 votes away. But in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, urban areas are not counted yet. And Pennsylvania has this thing also. There are 1 million mail-in ballots which has not been counted. And they're saying the state Secretary of State, Pennsylvania, is saying that you will have to wait until Friday for it. North Carolina, Biden is leading there, but their law says ballot postmark until election day, but arriving by the 9th day must be counted. So you will have to wait for 9 days or later for all of that to be counted. And Nevada is saying by tomorrow noon, they will be declaring what their results are. So if Nevada goes for Vice President Biden, then he is the president. But it doesn't mean he is the president because Trump campaign is already filing a lawsuit. They have filed a lawsuit in Wisconsin. They have filed a lawsuit in Pennsylvania and Michigan. In Michigan, they are asking that all votes count must stop now. So you're in Michigan, Sumaya. What is happening there? Do you have any latest idea?
Yeah, so, we've had a really long and exhausting day as we all saw the results come in last night. knowing that we probably wouldn't get the results by today. But we're really excited to say that here in Michigan, we had a record number of Michigan citizens that casted their ballot. First time in really our history here. Over 5.2 million Michiganders voted. And of that, 3.3 million voted absentee by using mail or going to their clerk's office and taking advantage of that. And we can thank the 1,500 clerks over the 83 counties here in Michigan, as well as volunteers that helped do that. So here in Michigan, they have called it. They said that Joe Biden has taken Michigan. I read a really, really great tweet earlier today, and it was really inspiring to me that, Detroit, which is one of the most neglected cities in America, won us this election. They really carried us through to get Joe Biden in there. So we're excited to see the rest of the turnout. I know like you said, we're about 264, so we still got some ways to go. I don't think we're going to find out until tomorrow or Friday after the other votes come in. But as a Michigander, as a Muslim American woman who's been working really hard with our fellow Michiganders to get out the vote, I'm really proud of the work that we did here.
That's wonderful. I think that waiting until Friday is American politics, is any politics of any country that has millions of people. You have to count their votes. And when they have multiple ways in which they can cast that vote, we haven't even talked about the absentee ballots from overseas, or people even in diplomatic service or other places, along with those mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, from here for our sick and kind of sequestered. I don't think that's too long to wait. To expect for an election to happen on one day and 2 hours later, all the results is an absurdity. And all the news channels are losing their minds. But I think this is one of those rare times of year when they get paid bonus money for jumping up and down and speculating. It's like watching speculation on a football match.
Yeah, no, I'll just say, like you said, every vote counts. So however many days that needs to take to make sure that every single voice is heard and is counted, is fine by me. And I think that's fine by most people. We waited 4 long years to get to this point. And it's imperative that, we make sure that all voices are heard. It's also really exciting to see that, I know people have mixed feelings about how close this race was, or maybe even still believe it is. But for me, the fact that we have so many votes and so many opportunities to kind of still weave this out shows how many people were involved in this election process, of all ages. So it's really exciting. I mean, even when I came home, my younger sister who's in college, it was really exciting for me to see her that she was still, I came home super late last night. And when do we see like college students and families, having election night watch parties, staying up all night with their families to see these results? People are really engaged. Muslim Americans are engaged. What more can we really ask for?
No, and I think it's important that the youth are so engaged, because they're so disengaged over a number of other things. And we're going to have plenty of time after all of this is over to analyze what went well, what didn't go so well, what matters we still need to attend to. Imam Malik, what do you think?
Well, the analysis has begun already thanks to the exit polls. And according to exit polls, surprising result is a lot of minorities have actually voted for President Trump.
Yeah.
There is a numbers are substantially high. Black women have gone double the numbers. Black men is higher. We don't have any information about Muslims, but a prior survey by CARE was saying that a larger number of Muslim planning to vote for Trump. And same thing about Latino. Latinos has gone, very, very high for Trump. So what is the Trump's appeal, Sumaya, in your eyes for the minorities?
So I think, like I was saying yesterday, I think there's a multiple reasons why people are coming out to vote. I don't think it's necessarily just to elect, a candidate who is Democratic or Republican. They want to elect a candidate who's listening to their issues and who they know can speak to them and will open up that door to hear their community out and fight for their community. So as we see this election happen and as the results come in, even yesterday night, right, in Detroit, we were seeing a lot of voter intimidation that was happening at the TCF Center downtown. We actually saw a lot of protesters come out to vote, try to stop people from casting their ballots and counting their, or not casting their ballots, counting their ballots. But right away, you saw folks from both sides, all races, all colors, all demographics to come out and say, every vote counts. We want to make sure that our voices are heard. So I think even after whoever is elected, we're going to see this huge shift of people taking it to the streets to make sure that whoever is in office, that we hold them accountable to what he, said he would do for us. And I don't think people are going to back down. So we're going to see this huge shift. And I think it's something really exciting from young voters to the minorities that you're speaking about as well.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Amna.
No, I was just going to say, in answer to your question, Trump appeals a lot to people's gut instincts. He doesn't use the language of the educated, because he's not, I don't think. He doesn't use words that you have to go run and get the dictionary to look up. But he's appealing to whiteness, to bringing America back to what it used to be. And for many in America, that means something I can understand. Not so much technology, not so much of all of this other stuff, but some real meat and potatoes things. For Black voters, I think a lot of that was a protest vote. There is a hesitancy to vote for Biden because of what he's done in the past. There is a gut reaction against Kamala Harris. So there are all of these things playing into, and on top of that, the Democratic Party did not cultivate the Black or brown vote this time. So that has played a huge role in why Muslims, Blacks, Latinos, a lot of people are saying, well, goodness, if you're not even going to say hello to me or give me a placard to put in my front yard, this is the first year, and I won't count how many years I've been voting, I have not received a placard from the Democratic Party or even a sticker to put in my front yard.
Some of you mentioned protest. In Chicago, there was a protest. In White House, they have boarded all around the streets, not White House per se boarded, but essentially whole premises boarded. So what are people protesting in Michigan about? And is it just one side or both sides?
Unfortunately, it's mainly the people who are Trump supporters right now that are protesting to stop counting the ballots and saying that it's fraud by allowing to count the absentee ballots that are coming in. And you'll see that Trump is probably, I think he said it a couple times already that he wants to contest that. And listen, we're going to listen to the law of the land. We're going to follow the rules. And if that's what he wants to do, that's fine. And we're ready on the ground here. We have Attorney General Dana Nessel, who will handle that with care and make sure that whatever is done, it's right, and we're following the law of the land. And to speak to Professor Aminah, in regards to some of those tactics that Trump used, you're absolutely correct. He wasn't coming out here saying fancy words and fancy things. He was just speaking to the demographic that he, was trying to
in front of, right?
And now you see after that election, there's a totally different way that, when Hillary came to campaign and when, Bernie and then when Biden, you see, that's kind of the front that they're using, As me, you can take me as an example. I'm 29 years old. Me and my husband, we have 2 twin boys. I just want to make sure that I don't have to work 50 jobs to be able to put food on the table and to spend time with my family. I want to make sure that I have savings, and I want to make sure that I can, do all of these things. So this is what the common American wants, right? They want a president who can give them somewhat of a normal lifestyle. So, you know, we're really excited here in Michigan, and I think young voters are excited to see, hopefully see a president that is going to listen to that and say, you know, we care about healthcare, we care about climate change, we, you know, are drowning in student debt, and we need help with that. And that's, you know, that's how our country is going to advance.
Well, see, that's why I think that there are two sides. There's that educated side who is drowning in student debt. There's the other side who doesn't have a house, uneducated, and their debts are putting food on the table and clothing on their children and paying rent. Trump appeals to the latter. And there are many more in this country of almost 350 million people than there are the elite.
So stay with us. This is Imam Malik Mujahid with Professor Aminah MacLeod co-hosting with me, and we're talking with Sumaya here from an organizer in Michigan. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. And Amna, I hear that you have another guest.
I do, and I'm excited. Alexander Acker Lyons is a political consultant and commentator and travels internationally as a trainer for the National Democratic Institute. We got some talk to have here. Alexandra is also the author of Political Ladder, Insider Tips on Getting a Job in Politics. Why would anybody want to do that? Which she recently published in 2012. Welcome, Alexandra.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. You know, I want to start off, and one of the large pluses and minuses has been the composition of the Democratic Party. And people have described it from herding cattle to herding sheep to herding all kinds of animals who are, they're going to have a protest tomorrow about being used as fodder. But are there so many different opinions that there is no one something that the Democratic Party could put out and stay with?
Well, that's a great question. You know, the Democratic Party has always been a big tent party, and we have always had diverse viewpoints and diverse activists and legislators in our ranks. I think ultimately it comes back to a commitment to equality, equity, and fairness. And we want to see that reflected in our laws as well as in our economy. Certainly, you know, Senator Manchin in West Virginia and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have very different ideas about how we get there, but there is an underlying value structure that the party is rooted in. I would say, unlike where the Republican Party has gone when they've kind of completely gone off the rails and didn't even adopt a platform this year to underlie their values and messages.
I think that they've been doing a little bit of that for the last 3.5 years, regardless how odious, heinous, offensive, and I would need a thesaurus to keep giving adjectives here, but the big tent, you know how you put stakes in a tent? The holes are everywhere. So when people look for something that they could cling on to. Young people wanted to hear something about climate change, their student loans. Other young people wanted to know, am I ever going to be able to make a living, a quote unquote regular living, in this highly technological world? And all they heard was wind.
All they heard was, I'm sorry, say that again, I'm sorry.
All they heard was wind.
Oh, you know, I do think that the Biden campaign took some good steps in reaching out to young people. I spent a lot of my career and still spend a lot of my time and energy helping to get young people engaged in the political process. Mm-hmm. They did talk about climate change. They did talk about student debt. They did talk about kind of generational change. Mm-hmm. But it is hard to get inspired when both candidates are white men in their 70s. And
tell me about it.
There is a certain segment, obviously, of the electorate who's not excited by that, as you pointed out, who were turned off by Senator Harris as the running mate. There was also a segment that was turned on. You know, we saw a significant uptick in support from young women when Senator Harris was added to the ticket. So I do think that the Democratic Party is going to have a little bit of a reckoning, especially with an election night that was not the outcome we had been hoping for. We have added some more conservative, moderate members to our Senate caucus. We lost some conservative members in our House caucus, but largely the 2018 freshman class was fairly moderate to conservative, with, you know, the exception of the squad, of course, and some other more progressive members. But this is nothing new to our party. I do think that we're going to have to fundamentally decide in a, you know, fingers, eyes, and toes crossed Biden-Harris administration, whether we go big or we stick with incrementalism. I am certainly in the camp of the former. And I had been hoping that we would have had a strong Senate majority to be able to back us up on some big change. But I do think that's what the country is crying out for, and it's certainly what we need.
Well, let me get Samaya, who is our oldest member on the panel tonight, to weigh in on this. Samaya, by way of introduction, has been leading campus voting in Michigan.
I think we've been on conference calls together. Your name is so familiar.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting hearing about that. You know, as Alexandra was talking through some points about the Democratic Party, I think in the beginning we definitely saw, you know, people felt like they weren't being heard by the party, right? But I definitely saw, I believe that you know, slowly but surely shifted. You know, they came out with things like the One campaign that, you know, helped establish paid canvassers and paid young leaders on the ground to help get out the vote. And to help people get engaged. So I definitely think they took huge leaps, really, and learned from mistakes in the past. And I think this is going to be something that we're seeing. And they know that Gen Z voters and young voters really helped make a difference this election, whether it was through social media or learning how to use TikTok or, you know, helping on campus engagement, whatever it is. They know that they had their back. And I think Gen Z voters are going to continue to show up. And I really believe that the Democratic Party is going to continue listening to that, because I don't think this work is going to happen without young voters on the forefront of it.
Well, let me, Imam Malik has sat back there listening to the three of us women solve the problems of the world. So I want to get him in here on the issues of political campaigns, although you probably can't talk reasonably about women voters. But on political campaigns, we women can handle the women voters.
Well, I would just say that, you know, a big tent means a big tent. It will never be, you know, Republican Party at this moment defining itself in a very particular way. Democratic Party is defining itself everything else. So everything else, meaning there is going to be always a less uniformity, a more inclusiveness, unlike the Republican Party, Democratic Party bylaws require each state delegation to include a substantial level of diversity, more diversity than it's found in America. So I think they're bound to be a competing interest and competing agenda. I personally think that is good for democracy.
I agree. And Alexandra, I want you to, what was the last, pre-COVID, that you were traveling internationally and got maybe a feel or a taste of how America is now being seen?
That is a good question. It has been a while. I do stay in touch with many of my friends and colleagues from those trips. My last international trip was to Morocco to be an election observer there, which was fascinating to see how similar things are and yet obviously so different. That is certainly something that I am most grateful for with a Biden-Harris win, is that we can try to rebuild our coalitions abroad, rebuild some of those relationships, not have this go it alone attitude, and understand that we need partners and allies all over the world, and that things are not black and white. And I think that we've been incredibly hurt by that with the Trump administration. We thought things couldn't get worse than George W. Bush, and boy, were we wrong.
Yeah.
As a veteran of John Kerry's campaign. So I will be very interested to see, one, who is chosen as Secretary of State, and how much trust. I'm speaking, of course, still crossing all the fingers, crossing all the toes, tossing salt over the shoulder, all the superstitions. We do hope that this race will be called tomorrow. Interested to see who is chosen for some of the more senior roles, and how much trust will be placed in those people, given that Vice President Biden obviously has extensive experience in the world of foreign affairs and extensive relationships there as well, where he will, of course, be our most important ambassador.
Well, Alexandra, since you provide insider tips,
I was just getting ready to
getting a job in politics, and you're wondering who should be Secretary of State. What about Professor Amna McLeod?
Sure.
Septuagenarians onto the rolls.
I think Susan Rice would, form a fight club over that one. But
why not Samantha Power? Why not Samantha Powers?
Samantha Power is another name that's certainly tossed about. We'll see. If we don't have a Democratic Senate, both of them might be a little controversial. And so there may need to be some deals cut on some of those more senior positions. I've been saying, if we don't take back the Senate, Mitch McConnell isn't even going to confirm cabinet appointees. He'll just block absolutely everything, but we'll have to wait and see.
And I'll just add on to what Alex said, when you were talking about the administration and, the different roles that will be filled in these next couple of weeks or months, I really hope, I think, the people have come out, the people have spoken, and they have stood behind a candidate, even if they didn't want to. So I think people are going to be really watching to see the diversity that's going to be in that administration, to see if, people are going to stand by what they said, and to make sure that all voices are at the table. Because I think that's going to be a huge step in seeing, making sure, keeping that promise to the people and ensuring that we continue that diversity and we continue advancing. And on the note of women, we know that, women always bring it home. The squad secured the deal and they had it in the bag. So at least we can count on women to always bring it home quickly and, surely.
Well, let me ask you back to your tips. We have encountered a lot of young people along the way who don't have a clue as to how to get into diplomat school, how to become a foreign correspondent. how to become an electoral observer. Now, I know we're going to buy the book. We're going to buy the book.
The book's always on sale on Amazon, and I am happy to give free copies away. I certainly didn't write it to make money.
No, but we will have you back just to deal with the book.
Well, and, you know, obviously going into something like the Foreign Service is a whole other ball of wax, as is the civil service. You know, there are exams and procedures that have to be followed for that. But generally, you know, getting a job in the administration, much like getting a job with an organization in Washington or any state capital, it's really about networking and hustling and who you know, not in a, you know, you have to be born into some prominent family sense of the word, but just being able to, you know, obviously in pre-COVID times, show up at an event, make yourself available to help. Now you can do a lot of that virtually. And I say, you know, if you make yourself indispensable, they'll find the money to hire you eventually. But the number one thing I would say to young people who are looking for a job in politics, especially right after an election, is you just have to be patient. It usually takes 3 to 4 months for very senior administration roles to be filled, and then all the ranks underneath get filled in. So don't pack up and move to Washington, D.C. yet. And certainly no shame in you know, waiting tables or doing whatever you need to do to make the ends meet for now, especially in this economy. Be patient and reach out to anyone and everyone. Even the busiest person has 10 minutes, and people are truly willing to help that next generation break in.
You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite and many other places. Alexandra, we will take a short break. Please stay with us. And Sumaya, so much thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. With me is co-host Amna McLeod, and we are talking Alexandra Lyons. So tell us this, Alexandra, that in the Senate, is there any any chance that we will be less divided than in the past?
It doesn't look that way. And I had devoted a lot of my time and energy to trying to win a bunch of those Senate seats for Democrats, including some of the longer shot ones. Right now, it looks like both Georgia races are headed to a runoff. It's possible it'll only be the special election. The Alaska Senate race is closer than people might think and will not be called for several weeks because Alaska takes a very long time to count all the mail-in ballots that come in from very far-flung rural areas. So it is looking like, at best, a 50-50 Senate. It is possible that a couple of these races that are close may go into recount territory. But I had really been hoping for, Democrats to win 53 or 54 seats. I just think with Mitch McConnell still in charge, we are going to have an incredibly divided Senate. And I don't have high hopes for being able to pass a lot of sweeping legislation. But you never know. There are several Republicans in swing states who are up in 2022. and they may decide to play Let's Make a Deal.
Okay, so let's add another guest to our conversation, Raza Rumi. Welcome to Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Network.
No.
Hi.
Wow, there seems to be a buddy system going on here.
Well, I know, Reza, we were both on Iranian TV a little bit ago, and then I had him on my program, Critical Talk.
So Raza Rumi is visiting faculty at Carroll Institute for Public Affairs. And one of the things which we're wondering, Alexandra, you were saying you were recently in Morocco observing their elections. So Raza Rumi and you, I like both of you to dwell on this, that normally America sends people around the world to observe elections. Who is observing our elections?
We do have international election observers come observe our elections and have for decades. It's actually something that President Jimmy Carter has championed after his presidency, which I think is wonderful. I mean, they should see both how great and how messy our elections are.
Absolutely.
So Raza, do you know where this election? I mean, I have this information that international election observers in the US offered a sharp rebuke of President Trump on early today, criticizing attack on the vote counting process and his premature claim that he has won 2020 election. And I quote, nobody, no politician, no elected official, nobody should limit people's right to vote coming after such a highly dynamic campaign. And he's Michael Geuk Link. I don't know where he is from, but representing Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So Europeans are interested that we have a fair election. So Raza, who else is interested?
I think, first of all, most Americans are concerned and interested that this should be a fair contest and a fair election leading to a popular endorsement of the popular vote, because we know that by now, whatever results we have is that Joe Biden has secured a historic number of popular vote, even more than Obama. So, which is an indication of the public mood in the United States, where Joe Biden may not be that widely popular candidate. I mean, he was a kind of a compromise candidate between different factions of the Democratic Party, but he has garnered so much interest and support across different communities and different networks and different states. So I think that is what the Americans would be expecting.
Well, I give credit number one to President Trump, who inspired everybody to vote from both sides, and and to women in America who just around his inauguration was marching in such a large number. So I think it's the President Trump who gets the credit, whether you like him or not. Is there any agreement here?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Some of that, I mean, it's what they call a backhanded compliment, that by his threats and his extraordinary statements before the election. So, first of all, he said that he may not accept the results if he loses. Then he raised objections to the electoral machinery, on different institutions. Media, of course, is an entity that President Trump does not really trust, and has been attacking media and journalists throughout his presidency. So I think he has definitely contributed to this high turnout. 100 million people voting just before the polling even started in most places. It was extraordinary. I mean, I would say unprecedented. I mean, as far as I know. And I'm no expert on U.S. elections, but I haven't seen such numbers from what I've read. So I think he has galvanized.
It is still way lower than what Muslims have been able to achieve. I mean, in Egypt, we have 95% people voting and electing one guy. So that's a record.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I think that's a separate story. Egypt and other states where you have where general the electoral process is so deeply manipulated, you know. So in that case, I mean, one has to give credit to some of the institutions within America where you cannot really, even when you have people at the top wanting to influence election and the electoral process, there's only so much that they can do. Yes, they use the Facebook this time. That's been a biggest problem this in this election, the role of big technology and big tech companies, you know, that have been promoting misinformation, twisted facts, suiting a particular political narrative, much as Facebook denies it. But, you know, they have been doing that. And even today, there were reports I was reading this morning that despite their claim that they would stop political ads on the election day yesterday, those ads were still continuing. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, Facebook wants to make money. So it doesn't really care whether there's a fair election, whether there's people's will being upheld or not. So yeah. So I mean, here there are different kind of here the corporations, unfortunately, the unregulated, untamed corporate interests are so wide and so deep and so overwhelming that they even kind of take precedence over individuals and institutions. So I think that's a real challenge. You know, whatever happens by tomorrow, we would have a much clearer idea or a firm idea. But I guess the biggest challenge for the next president as well as the next administration would be what they do about this intrusive role of big tech and where technology is manipulating people's both emotions and sentiments and political preferences.
Alexandra, when you visited Morocco for elections, you're seeing so many similarities and all that. Could you compare what is it like observing election in another country?
That's a great question. I've observed both in Morocco, and then I was also in Kuwait. This was, probably 10 years ago now, for the first elections when women were allowed to run for parliament. That was exciting to watch. What is similar, I would say, is the patriotism and the sense of excitement and the good side of factionalism, in that people feel very loyal to their team. In Morocco, much of the political partisanship is based on tribe and region, and kind of long time family lineage, rather than a specific ideology. And they tend to be kind of more personality driven parties, which obviously is something we're starting to see more and more of here. But just that real sense of pride, which I think is something that we saw on Tuesday and leading into Election Day, with people proudly displaying their "I voted" stickers, waving a flag while they're in line to vote. Even just the idea that someone would stand in line for hours to vote is certainly something we see all over the world. I remember when the first elections were held in Iraq, and people would hold up their finger that they had dipped in ink to show that they had voted. There's a real sense of pride. And to your point, you said, we even though we saw record turnout in this election, it is still pretty abysmal compared to other nations. Which there are structural issues around. Voter registration is a voter suppression tool, and we certainly, in many cases, do not make it easy to vote, and that is all on purpose. And we've seen some positive changes in that regard, both pre-COVID and as a result of COVID. And I think I live in Colorado, we have the best laws in the country, where every voter is mailed a ballot. You fill it out at home, you put it in a drop box. It couldn't be easier, couldn't be more convenient. So I think now that voters in states like Pennsylvania and Michigan have started to see how expanding the ways in which we can vote also expand the franchise, that it's going to be very hard to go back.
Alexandra, you mentioned the tribal divisions in Morocco when you were visiting. I want to talk about our tribes here in America. I mean, the New York Times exit poll says white people, both men and women, were the only group in which majority voted for President Trump. With Malaysia and all that, whites are becoming a tribe of America, the largest tribe in this country, or what's happening here?
We've certainly started to see that, and as a married white woman, my people need to do better. I was hopeful that white women would improve in this election, and there's some mixed results. I do think we are seeing increased factionalism. We're seeing people increasingly going to their corner. We saw it in the last several election cycles with Senate races matching up almost 100% with the results of the presidential election in their state. And I don't see how we make that better in the short term. This is, I think, a very long-term problem of both, to the point about tech companies and misinformation, the lack of local journalism, and the lack of civics education, frankly.
But one of the things which I am concerned about, not concerned, I mean, I see irony. I'm a peace movement person, and I'm in an interfaith movement. And what I see, white women are all over when it comes to peace movement, when it comes to interfaith movement. And I happen to be in Cleveland, Ohio, when first women march took place, and it was sea of white women. So it seems like white women, although majority has gone with the white men in this election, giving the only majority a demographic which President Trump has. But there seems to be a movement there. Do you see a movement, or is it static?
I mean, what we have seen, I think, is a dramatic shift among college-educated white women, who in many ways are helping to lead the resistance. They, as you pointed out, were certainly the face of many women's marches, were the reason for the Democratic wave in 2018. Exit polls are notoriously unreliable around the margins. They're usually 5 or 7% wrong on either end. So we have to kind of wait and see what the margins actually shake out to be. But I think we can safely assume that non-college educated white women voted much more similarly to non-college educated white men than they did to college-educated white women. But that educational divide is also a geographic divide, as we see more and more polarization with educated folks heading to cities, and that concentrating the Democratic vote.
Well, thank you so much, Alexandra Lawrence. We like to have more on our Muslim Network TV because of your tips how to get into politics. That's the main hook there.
It is.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And Raza Rumi, please stay with us. We take a short break. You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Apple TV, Amazon, and many other places. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm co-hosting with Professor Aminah MacLeod. Rumi, one of the questions which I just presented dealt with minorities. And before we continue this conversation, let me invite, before I pose a question and let Aminah take the next segment, we have Mustafa Carroll. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Well,
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Okay, Mustafa Carroll is a former executive director of the Council of American Islamic Relations in Houston as well as in Dallas area. We're talking with Raza Rumi also, and Raza is working with the he's visiting faculty at Cornell Institute of Public Affairs. One of the questions which before the break, we were talking about that white men and women both, according to exit poll, which has a higher margin of error, was the only majority group voting for President Trump. But one of the things, Raza, which is very unique, which I'm quite interested in learning more about, is that minorities voted for Trump in larger number also, as compared to 2016, whether they are blacks. 12% blacks voted for Trump, and black men was 18%. Latinos, 32%. Asians overall, 31%. And we don't have a data about Muslims, but an earlier survey by CARE National was saying about 13% Muslim are planning to vote for Trump, and up to 30% approve him, and may 30% vote for him. So we don't know. So isn't this interesting that not only white are solidly behind in terms of majority, plurality of votes here, but also significant number of minorities have moved towards President Trump. What Raza, you and Mustafa, you have to say, and Amna, you are the expert in this.
Maybe Mustafa can begin and then I can add, because he would know better than I certainly do.
I definitely don't know better. I can't even understand why. But I'll try to give a little bit of insight from talking with people in the Muslim community, and I haven't met many African Americans that would admit it. But I was speaking with several that were talking about the economic issue, that they could get more tax dollars, and then there was some with the theological that the Democratic Party is liberal, left-wing, socialist. They believe in abortions, and they get the LGBT, etc. That's some of the issue. And some of the issue that you might find with some African Americans may be along the same theological or economic grounds. We're not a monolith, but it's, and so I pose the question is, he's saying any Muslim, I was told that any Muslim should be voting for a conservative agenda. And I say, well, that depends on what you call it conservative. So if you call paying a porn star conservative, or the Muslim ban, or any number of other issues, I mean, we could go on and on and on and on, then that would be a challenge. But I have the only things that I do know about people who actually want to support Trump is that the economic stuff seems to take precedent, that they think they're going to get bigger tax breaks because, he's going to do things for them, etc. Some people don't even believe that he is saying what he's saying, which really disturbs me. I mean, one guy tried to tell me I didn't hear what I heard. And so you hear people, yeah, I mean, you sitting up here, he's on TV saying, let's ban the Muslims until we find out, quote unquote, what the hell is going on. And you're telling me I didn't hear that. And that's the left-wing media that's taking advantage of Trump. And I'm finding Muslims are buying into that, and some African Americans are buying into that. So it's kind of hard to deal with and imagine, the logic behind it. But there is a logic, I guess, but it's just not, it's unfounded.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that. When it comes to the voting patterns and electoral behavior, class is a big determinant. So this is where your ethnic background and your race they intersect with your class. And for a lot of people who are backward in economic terms, both whites and non-whites in the US, Trump somehow has managed to convince them that he is some kind of a savior or somewhat better for them as compared to the establishment of the corporate establishment in both big parts. He had that image. He kept on saying again and again he's not a typical politician. He's not one of the corrupt elite. And if you remember in the presidential debate also, he reiterated this point, when he called Joe Biden and his family as corrupt and corrupt politician, etc., etc. He used that word many times, and even in his rallies. So I think that's one area where it galvanizes the support from a lot of people, working people. But another important part here is, and I was also intrigued that the Hispanic community or the many communities, for example, in Texas and in Florida, have voted for Trump in good large numbers. And one, so I was quite dumbfounded, and I was trying to investigate it since the morning as to why. I mean, he has called them rapists, thugs, snakes. I mean, there's a whole list of name calling. And so someone said to me that a lot of these people in these communities have escaped authoritarian states or unstable environments. And when they are here, they look forward to having a strong man in charge, in terms of security, national security. And so it's that kind of attitude as well. But I think taxes and other issues do matter. I don't know about the Muslim trends. I mean, it's a very small segment anyway of the total population of the US. But certainly, I think you would also find similar trends running across. I mean, I do not know that some. I mean, I'm from Pakistan originally. I know that there's some South Asians or Pakistanis for Trump, and I was always intrigued as to what what attracts them in President Trump's political narrative and policies. But I think, and there's a conventional Republican or conservative vote bank. I mean, the Republicans always have enjoyed that. So some of that also gets in Donald Trump's favor. But having said that, I think the largest story here, as I mentioned earlier, is that there has been a large turnout. And Joe Biden, he's crossed 70 million mark in terms of popular vote. And still there are many votes, millions that are yet to be counted. And a lot of votes by mail are conventionally or historically, they go to the Democrats in large numbers. So, which basically means that, at the end of the day, Joe Biden is emerging. Whether he actually gets to White House or not, he is very close now. But whether he gets there or not, he does seem to have galvanized a lot of support, popular support. So, which also makes his task more onerous in the coming months and years if he gets to the White House.
Well, I think I agree with both of you in different ways. When I actually saw this, when the man in Congress called Obama a liar, and then the white woman, wherever it was they were, Arizona, Texas, or somewhere, put her finger in his face, I decided that they were truly mates, and I left it alone. I think the one thing we haven't looked at here, Muslims in many quarters have been trying to distance themselves as the unique, the perfect, the this, the that, or the other. And they haven't seen where they have allies with regard to ideological stances, as Mustafa was mentioning. Many Muslims don't like the embrace of abortion, for example. They haven't quite thought through the fact that now we have a Catholic Supreme Court. So they're not going to have any abortions, and anything that comes before the court in that is the case from any smaller or other non-Christian faith stands a chance of zero winning. On the other hand, Muslims have been at odds with the LGBTQ crowd, and especially in the African American community. And I don't know if Mustafa listened, but many of us were listening to the Lamppost conference. And that came up over and over and over again. What is Islamically correct? Where do the values stand? And then people were realizing that for many immigrants, Islam only has the morals that serve them. It doesn't have a moral base if it means losing money. And these were things that were talked about in this conference, and that African Americans had to stand for what they knew to be tried and true Islamically at all costs. So you have a thing of where I'm looking at two things. Which is less moral? Trump's mouth or LGBTQ, abortion? Every time I look up on TV, I see a man in a pink outfit running around, or I see my kids have to watch people in half and half. They saw all of the gaps in the Democratic tent. African Americans largely saw it. They are extremely religiously conservative.
Right.
They are not what is called now liberal at all. They may have been in favor of immigration until they found the immigrants to be racist. Because too many of their relatives lost their lives so those immigrants could come here. And they're saying, mistake, mistake, mistake. And there's nothing they can do about it except go with what speaks against more of them. So there are lots of issues I don't think have been honestly addressed. And if you live here, they're almost unavoidable. You can stick your head in the sand, but actually they're almost unavoidable. What do you think, Imam Malik?
Well, I think we're talking about a small percentage, 12% blacks, 13% Muslims. One variable which we haven't, you brought a whole lot of things about that, but one variable, very important variable, I think, is class. What tax bracket are you? And another variable which some of those people brought to me who are in neither of the category. Amna, you were talking about racist immigrant and all that, or racist African or racist white. I'm not talking about those people. They were motivated by who has done less bombing of their country. That keep coming up. I will say Obama has, and they have statistics of
Even.
how many time drone attack on their country, while Trump has less number of drone attack. I haven't seen that statistics before. So it seems that is a small percentage still. The larger percentage is actually Latinos and Asians in general. 32% Latinos, 31%. So we can beat to the death of the black and the Muslim, but they are talking about 12, 13%. Majority is so there is an appeal in Trump, I would say. And that appeal should be given a credit that he is able to speak to them. He's making sense to them. Maybe these people think this is a white country. Why in the world we are trying to change it for some reason? I don't know. I'm just, there's no evidence for any of that. But why these people are ignoring the direct racist attack on Latinos? Why these people are ignoring direct racist attack on Muslims? That takes a lot. But when I hear the phenomena of bullying, in school and all that, bullying, one of the response to bullying is people submit to bullies. Do you
Well,
think
I think you're
is in play?
no, I think you're absolutely right. But you got to remember that the majority of Latinos in this country are Catholic or they're evangelical Protestant. Neither one of them are for the liberal kind of religious persuasions that the Democratic Party is for.
No.
That's an important variable. Well, we will continue this conversation. Well, thank you, Raza, for being with us. Thank you so much for your time. And Mustafa, Carroll, please stay with us as we continue conversation, and we will have some more interesting conversation coming up. So stay tuned. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and my co-host is Professor Aminah McLeod. And we have a leader from Texas, Mustafa Carroll, who is also with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and with me is Professor Aminah McLeod. And my dear brother, how are you doing, Mustafa?
Alhamdulillah.
All right. In Dallas or Houston?
I'm in Plano, in Dallas area.
All right. Well, right now we're supposed to have with us Mustafa Tharer. He's the founder of American Muslim for Trump. And as you know, I had several questions to ask him. And I thought Brother Mustafa and Sajid Tharer have something to talk about. But at this moment, he's not responding to our calls. Maybe he has been watching Aminah McLeod making such a major statements here or something like that.
Not me. But can we do...
So you ran him out, Aminah. You ran him out.
Yeah, blame it on me, dude.
But we will have something great. Aminah, you have next get Kurt Braddock with us. You want to introduce him?
Oh, hi, Kurt.
Hi, salam.
This is great.
With you.
Because now, before I do violence and have a moment of extremism, we're going to talk about violence, extremism, and counterterrorism. Kurt Braddock is an assistant professor of public communication in the School of Communication at American University, and is presently interested in the development of communicative counter-radicalization strategy. That's too much for one mouth.
Wow. The professor is abandoning the language.
Prevent white supremacism, neo-Nazism, and the adoption of other violent, far-right, and I guess you mean left, ideologies. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
Good luck. You got a lot of job to do there, Kurt.
Oh, yeah. Sadly, I don't think it's going to get any easier given how it's looking in the wake of the election.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
And teaching communication. If you had to list three things, what would the three most important things be to have in your communication strategy toolbox? I was trying to find a long sentence to mess with that title you got.
No, that long title is probably just a function of the fact that I just started at American University, so I needed to sound much more impressive than I am. And finding it, 3 words that I think in a communication toolkit, especially with respect to the work that I do in counter-radicalization, I mean, empathy, empathy, empathy. That doesn't mean that you need to sympathize with the people that I study being far-right extremists or far-left extremists or any extremists, but it makes sense to understand where your message targets are coming from and what their grievances are. And in the work that I've done and in the teaching that I've done, I've found that that's been what's lacking in US policy with respect to any kind of messaging campaigns, is a complete failure to understand why those that we're trying to prevent from engaging in violence even see it as an option. So I think that there really needs to be a way to understand our message targets in a way that we haven't in the past. Oh, muted again, I think.
I didn't do it. Let me pose for you an interesting kind of conundrum.
Sure.
I have Martin Luther King, who the federal government says is a radical and needs to be eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
I have Malcolm X, who the United States says is a radical and needs to be eliminated. One advocates nonviolence and watches people get eaten by dogs and sprayed with water, and he himself is murdered. The other doesn't advocate or not advocate violence, but talks about self-defense, and he gets murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Talk your way out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that I would never try to talk my way out of it. I will not defend the way that Dr. King and Malcolm X were treated by the government or by white people writ large in their time. But when in the work that I do, and what I try to advocate in not even just government work, but community work and my teaching, is that we shouldn't be in the business of trying to police beliefs and attitudes. It's one thing to have a belief about something. It's another thing to say that you're going to hurt somebody because of it. So in the work that I do, I try to target communities, and right now it's these right-wing communities where conspiracy theories are really circulating and people are really expressing a desire to engage in violent behavior to defend it. I have no interest in trying to talk somebody out of beliefs if they don't have any kind of interest in engaging in violence. It's when they turned to violence, it's when they turn away from violence that, or when they turn toward violence, that it becomes an issue.
So you would, if you had been around during the time of Martin Luther King, who was asking people to not respond violently, even when being attacked,
Mm-hmm.
And was considered not just the white community, but by many in the Black community as radical, because the word de-radicalization it is such a loaded term. On the other hand, in my field, I'm looking at Muslims, variously labeled, and they got more word for Muslims than I can think of at the moment. But everybody wants to de-radicalize, make them quiet, so that they don't speak up against atrocities.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I sympathize.
We work with this terminology.
Well, there are people who still advocate for the use of that term, de-radicalization, and among some people that do this work in terrorism studies, we're starting to abandon it. Some people, there are still some who cling to it like a security blanket. But a couple of years ago, I did some work with a psychologist where we said that we shouldn't be calling it de-radicalization. We should be calling it risk reduction with respect to reducing the risk of people engaging in violence.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
when does one need, didn't mean to cut you off, when does one need to take a stand? Whether it's the United States calling certain acts of genocide or other things. When do people need to take a stand that is not a lay down and die against violence.
I think when one's body and one's person is at risk for physical harm, self-defense is a reason for engaging physically. I'd prefer not get to that point. I would rather deal with the people who are advocating for violence in the first place. But I don't know that anybody would argue that if somebody is directly threatening your person, that you shouldn't be allowed to fight back against that. How you draw lines, or no, you would call it justified violence versus not justified violence. And I mean, looking at U.S. policy for, hundreds of years with respect to how the government's treated minority groups. I don't know how you would define what constitutes the violence that would be defended against. That's such a value judgment, but I think protecting one's person is that line.
So you are working to prevent white supremacism, which many, the Proud Boys and others are calling protecting America, and neo-Nazis who are all over the world. And the adoption of violence and these far-right ideologies. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So just like any kind of ideology that was kind of the focus in past years, in the decade and a half after September 11th, everybody was focusing on Muslims, but now moving toward the white supremacist realm again, everybody's looking there now. But whatever ideology I'm looking at, I'm concerned with the commission of violence. So with the Proud Boys, who, if you're not familiar, they call themselves a male supremacist group, but they bump up against and they kind of overlap with white supremacists and neo-Nazis quite a bit. They have, in recent weeks and recent months, gotten increasingly more violent, not just in word, but also in action. So they've organized quite a bit, and they've become one of the preeminent threats from the far right in the U.S. in the last several months. Under President Trump, and even before President Trump, really, when Obama was elected in 2008, we saw a huge uptick in white supremacist groups, white militias, and neo-Nazis, because they saw the election of a black president as a threat to white autonomy in the U.S. But when President Trump was elected in 2016, they saw that as almost like a vindication of their white supremacist beliefs, because to that point, he had already said some pretty controversial things. So we've just seen kind of a gradual exponential uptick in white supremacist ideology and white supremacist and neo-Nazi violence in the last 12 years now. So it never went away. A lot of people like to think that white supremacist terrorism went away. It's ingrained in what the United States is. Systemic racism, including extreme racism to the point of violence, has always been there. It's just that now it's kind of come out in the open because frankly, Trump made it okay to do so. So that's why it's so much more visible now.
Can I invite Mustafa Carroll? He's down there in that battle state that always wants to succeed, but we keep dragging them back, and they need to go ahead and succeed. Into the conversation.
Please.
Let me say this first. You know, I detest that term de-radicalization from the beginning. I liked it. It really just sticks in my craw because primarily it was used for something against the Muslim community. And I've dealt with that for the last 14 or 15 years, since 9/11 especially. And I was in a meeting back around 2009 or so. We had this leadership meeting with the FBI. And I was in the meeting and he was going around the room. And when he came to me, I said, look, according to your own statistics, there's been only 6% of this issue that Muslims have been, people with Muslim names or Muslims have been involved in. And the other 94%, what do you do? Why don't you do to them what you've been doing to us? Why don't you go to their churches and ask them what verse in the Bible they like best and all this kind of stuff? And he said, well, they won't talk to us. And I just looked around the room and say, see there, they won't talk, but you all will. And you find it pretty easy to have these conversations every month. We're meeting with them for what? So that's got that out the way.
Okay,
go ahead.
Let me ask you, Mustafa, to scoot back to the center of your screen. I know you had to get it out your craw, but get yourself back in the center of the screen. Let me bring Imam Malik in with us to this conversation.
Well, but, you know, the conversation is good as it is going. I mean, unfortunately, we lost Kurt here, Professor. I don't know why he dropped out, but, you know, Mustafa has been fighting and dealing with this issue for a longest period of time. I think this is about time if we take a short break. And as we come back, we get Adam Carroll also. So there will be two Carrolls at the same time. I hope the system does not break. So you're watching Muslim Network TV, and we have Professor Aminah MacLeod and Mustafa Carroll with us, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and with me is Mustafa Carroll. And what happened, Kurt? We dropped you for a minute. Were you able to hear him?
Yeah, I blame my internet connection. It's relatively terrible. But no, what I heard from Mustafa was he hates the term de-radicalization, and I agree 100% with that. It assumes that there are wrong thoughts to have, and that's a very dangerous road to go down. There may be thoughts we disagree with. There might be thoughts we find unpalatable, but that's a very slippery slope that I don't think we have any place to be deciding what's right and what's wrong to think. It's when people become violent that it's an issue, not when they think certain things.
Okay. Let me bring in conversation Adam Carroll. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. Adam Carroll is the director of UN program at Justice for All, and also leads Burma Task Force team and hosts a weekly show, United Nations This Week, on Muslim Network TV. We have with us Mustafa Carroll, who is from Carroll, Texas, and we have Kurt from American University. And we have been talking radicalization. So now that you are with the United Nations, does United Nations care what happens in American elections?
Well, I was going to say the United Nations has radicalized me, but that's another story.
I have a sound problem there. So we will just
let's see if it increases. Sometimes it gets louder as I speak. Is it working?
Sounds a little better.
Yeah, let me see if this will gain in power. So, as far as the UN goes, I mean, the US government under Trump has, of course, retreated from multilateralism. And Joe Biden asserts that he will go back to business as usual, which is perhaps not good enough. Some have hopes that he'll do better than that. What is multilateralism? That means working with the UN with treaties. Today is the day that the United States withdrew formally, or rather, the withdrawal took effect from the Paris Accord on the climate. So today was the day we're gone. So Joe Biden, if he wins this election, will, as he says it, on the first day in office, bring us back into that treaty. So this embrace of treaties and UN agencies such as the WHO, the World Health Organization, the UNESCO, the Human Rights Council, all of these that the U.S. has left under the Trump administration, this will change under a Biden administration. However, will that solve everything? No. And I think that the international community, while it's watching this election as if it's watching a train wreck, I mean, I'm getting people contacting me from all over the world saying, what is happening? What do you think is going to happen? But obviously, today also we had, for the first time, 100,000 new COVID-19 cases in one day. So, our dysfunction is domestic as well as in foreign policy, and it's going to take a lot of work to turn that around. Putting human rights up in the center of our foreign policy is very important. And of course, I'm a human rights person, so I'm going to say that. But there's always going to be a tension between defining U.S. interests in terms of U.S. business interests and other values like human rights. It's always going to be a tension. But of course, that tension has tipped very far towards business, transactional, trade-related business, being chummy with dictators and so forth under the Trump administration. And one thing to say is that so many diplomats were either pushed out of the State Department, or so many ambassadorships were not filled for years under this administration. And currently, for example, I work on Burma. There's no regular ambassador in Burma, despite all the really serious issues there. And so all of these show that no one was really taking the international system seriously as a partner. And hopefully this will change. Joe Biden says that he'll convene a big conference talking about authoritarianism and the rise of that trend of nationalism. There's so many challenges, not to mention the pandemic. And so he's really got his work cut out for him.
Well, Mustafa and Kurt, do you both consider that Biden will have any opportunity, considering that Senate is going to be, it seems like, going to be Republican, and he will be just fighting to get anything done? I mean, is America looking on better days in a divided government? Nation is definitely divided. The government is going to be divided. So what are we looking at?
Well, I think we spent a lot of time this last year or so thinking about how we can get the current administration out. And I think that people need to realize that we're dealing with a system, that the president is not king, no matter how bad or how good he is. He's not king. We have to deal with the whole system. And just to go back a little bit, our interests have always been economic. It's not like we just started that. We're not really all that moral. When it comes to our financial interests and other things, that always will trump it. No pun intended. But I'm looking for better days. but I think we have to grow up and understand that the country is not controlled by one person. And that even though we talk about Trump, look at the millions of folks that supported him, look at the Congress and the senators and those folks. So we have to start looking at it realistic and grow up and not assume that because you put a president in or the person is less of the two evils, that it's going to get better. We're going to have to work to make it better. It's going to be a challenge no matter who wins this election. It's going to still be a challenge. And maybe a bigger challenge. I think it was Kurt or Dr. McLeod that it's just said that, you know, Obama brought in a lot of this stuff just because he was black. You know, that this has always been the underpinnings of this society has always been anti-black and worrying that if black people got in power, they would kill everybody and all this other kind of stuff. So we have a challenge ahead of us. And we need to see it as that. We don't need to think that, oh, yeah, it's going to be rosy days now. Now it's going to be a struggle.
Kurt, how do you see? I mean, President Trump just recently got a whole lot of people, in bureaucracy, some type of changes that unless you're loyal and all that, he has right to dismiss people or career diplomats. So if he wins, do you see the trend towards authoritarianism will continue, or President Trump will think now he has to, clarify, now he won the second term and now he need to, for the history's sake, do things in a way that he, instead of divider in chief, he could bring people together? Is there any chance of that?
I mean, completely independent of my own political beliefs, I think if you just look at the history and look at the data, thinking that he's going to become presidential if he was elected to another 4 years and just needs another chance, I think you'd be fooling yourself. I think that the trend toward authoritarianism would march forward unabated, because I don't think at least the vast majority of his own party seem to have shown any inclination to slow him down or stop him. It just seems to me, I mean, it makes me sad to say it, but it does seem as though many Republicans have chosen party over country, and it seems like that if Trump were elected again, there's no reason to think that he would change course. I don't see any reason why he would change course as to what he's doing so far. And as I said, the difficult part isn't just that he'd do it. It'd be very easy if he said, I'm going to do this, and the party reined him in. But his party shows no inclination to doing so, and it looking like that the Republicans are gonna hold the Senate, or at least split the Senate. If he's reelected, I think that he would have free reign to do those sorts of things, and I think he would do them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for being with us, Kurt, and thank you, Mustafa, for being with us. We'll take a short break and we'll continue some conversation with Adam Carroll and get another guest to talk with us. Thank you so much. You're watching Muslim Network TV. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and with me is co-host Professor Aminah MacLeod, who is almost hidden for us, and Adam Carroll, who is just with Justice for All, representing us at the United Nations. At this moment, I would like to get in conversation Jorge Mojica also. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, good night, everybody.
Hey, you got a big world map. I mean, you got a lot of burden on your shoulders, young man.
We can't see you.
This is the symbol of international migration and legalization for all. So
but the problem is you remain hidden under all of that light. So we like to see more of you. Okay, so Jorge, tell us this. Professor Aminah MacLeod is a professor emeritus at DePaul, and my co-host here, and Adam Carroll works for Justice for All at the United Nations. And I will ask a question, and then we will have Aminah take over. One of the things is that in this election, according to exit poll, 32% of Latinos have voted for Trump. I know that majority of Latinos are Catholics, but I don't think Trump is any religious person. But what type of Spanish has Trump speaking to Latinos that they have gone so big?
It's really complicated. I think Donald Trump launched a big campaign among Latinos. And please remember, of course, Latino is a denomination that really doesn't explain my community. I mean, it's not the same thing, the person who comes from Venezuela escaping Maduro and pro-socialist regime than the peasant that comes from our state of Guerrero who came here out of poverty. You know, so Latino doesn't really define us. But he staged a campaign with different issues. One of them, as Professor Aminah was precisely saying, relating abortion, making people believe that abortion was going to be mandatory under Joe Biden. And many people bought that kind of campaign. And then, of course, for some segments of the population, Cubans, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, he launched a campaign saying that Biden was socialist. So that appeals to that segment of that population from those countries. So it not so much for Mexicans, because the Mexican community overwhelmingly voted for socialist Bernie Sanders. So what scares one segment of the Latino population doesn't affect the other segment of the Latino population. But indeed, he got at least the same support he got last time, maybe with a little bit more noise this time, but the numbers didn't go up. Traditionally, the Republican Party has gotten between 26 and 38% of the Latino vote nationwide. So not a big surprise, really.
Okay. So it seems that in politics, lies still work.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there was really a big campaign. I mean, I can see it appealing also to racism. Big campaign when the protest because of the murder of George Floyd, big campaign among Latinos by saying you are not the same as blacks, okay? So you have to behave differently. And that's traditional also, divide and conquer.
So,
There,
Adam, you mentioned in the United Nations, they will be happy that unlike Trump, Biden would like to work with other people and join different entities. So is this the universal feeling on that area? They are also thinking there may be some funding of the United Nations might increase under Joe Biden. The mic, please. Yes.
Someone did it. Yeah, certainly that is expected, that the funding will be restored. I think that also, the EU and other traditional allies will begin to feel a little more comfortable with our leadership, maybe Boris Johnson accepted, and certainly China and Russia will regret if Trump is gone, because they've rushed into the vacuum of leadership that he has created. And so they will miss that vacuum, but we are competitors, right? And so China will continue to compete in its way with the Belt and Road. On human rights, they have much to criticize, right? We all are aware of the Uyghur genocide and their treatment of other minorities like the Tibetans and Hong Kong. So I think both parties have woken up to a great extent to the threat of China, not just as a economic competitor, but as a whole different model of development and governance. Russia, of course, Trump withdrew from treaties, and so the whole issue of proliferation of nuclear and other weapons is very urgent and really requires attention. And I think we can see a Biden administration doing that. Not simple. None of these things are simple. It's all messy. Intervention through a multilateral effort is one thing, but U.S. unilateral intervention, usually Trump is given somewhat of a pass. He's thought of as a non-interventionalist because he says America first. But in fact, he has increased the presence of our presence in Niger and our presence in Somalia quite a bit. He's still stuck in Afghanistan. I'm not sure that Biden would have done better, frankly. But these things are quite complicated. And I heard very recently that President Obama, campaigning for Joe Biden, says that Biden was the least interventionalist of his cabinet members, his immediate advisors. If that's the case, then that's something to bear in mind. But we don't know what the world will throw at us in the next, weeks or years.
World throws at us, or we throw at the world. Jorge, tell me, how have you been reading any media in Latin America? How people are seeing what's going on in our elections?
Well, mostly they are laughing because this electoral system is totally ridiculous. Everybody expected results yesterday night, and they are laughing at the fact that the most powerful and democratic country in the world can decide who their president is. But other than that, there's so obvious criticism to the two of them, to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden, as vice president, served in some diplomatic capacity, certainly. He was in contact with prime ministers and presidents all over the world. And particularly in Mexico, there's a very interesting reaction. I do believe it was part of the Donald Trump campaign, publishing pictures of Joe Biden with a former Mexican president who's really hated by the people. Salinas de Gortari. That was the president who originally signed the North America Free Trade Agreement, which brought catastrophic results for Mexico, displacement of peasants and many people ending up in the United States, immigrating as undocumented immigrants. So the picture of Biden and this former president, I think, had an impact too. And I think it was a slingshot campaign. I throw that to Mexico, so Mexicans in Mexico will return it to Mexicans in the United States to convince people to vote for Trump instead of Biden. Very interesting things, commentaries and analysis in Latin America.
Okay. And I know that both of you have waited substantially here. I'm very thankful to you. But a couple of guests I was expecting earlier have arrived, so I'm going to take a short break. I'd like to thank you, Jorge and Adam, both of you. Now we will have a couple of other guests which you wanted to talk to you. So thank you so much, both of you. And we'll be right back after these messages. You're watching Muslim Network TV, and we'll continue our conversation in our last segment. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. Amna, where are you? I can see you somewhere else. You are. Are you with us?
I'm here. I missed great opportunities.
All right. Well, you will have more opportunity. We will have two great people right now, finishing off in a big way with us. One is our Chicagoan, Mona Abdul Mishan.
Hi.
Welcome.
How's everybody?
Salam warahmatullah. And we also have with us Edward from CARE.
Assalamu alaikum. Law and comedy go together.
All right.
I'll just say that.
Say that.
Right, Amna, take it away. Amna is better civil rights fighter than CARE, and she's a better comedian. Mona, now prove that wrong.
I don't think I can do that. Well, both of you. Edward has been on my show. Mona, I'm just meeting you, but I intend to meet you more
inshallah,
in the future.
What a beautiful name. The Prophet's grandmother, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mother.
Yes. Peace be upon
her. Edward is, look at his face, serious as if you can make him laugh, we will have.
I have made him laugh.
You've already won. You got it.
I only got it twice, but lots of things are going on. Muslims find it very, very difficult to laugh. And sometimes laughter is a healer. On the other side,
Amna, please speak for yourself. Why you're including me on there?
Never laugh.
Look at Edward. Look at Edward.
Oh, the two of you need your own show for real.
No, I'm telling you. Anyway, I have had to make myself laugh, but we got two serious issues. One is about artists in this time of being shut up and down. And the other is about the slippery slope of civil rights.
Amen.
And how they've gotten conflated into human rights. They've got things that are privileges and desires have been made into rights. don't look so serious, Edward, or I will put Mona on you. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, the terminology is so conflated. Talk to me, you two.
Why don't you? Should I jump in? Should you tag me in?
Make this dude laugh because he's
so. But what you bring up is this beautiful connection between really the survival of the civil rights activists, and it's something like the St. Louis Red and Cincinnati Red, Malcolm X or Red Fox, right? Like
I like both of them. I grew up in St. Louis.
Right, but which one survived and why? They had the same message. Which one survived and why? And now we're at that crosshairs where both of them are going to be able to contribute powerfully by conveying a message and dodging a bullet by being able to either use stand-up or having the comedians and now being able to support the civil rights activists, because it takes a toll. I'm a Palestinian. I grew up marching. As a Chicago Palestinian, we were marching all the time. So, but that tires you. When marching in the winter, come on, right? So in general, the longevity. Say that again.
I said it's the best time. You'll get it done.
You get it done. Alhamdulillah. So me having, and even in this beautiful dichotomy, me having performed for the brother next to me for an event, and our connection is being able to, like, I would love to be able to entertain through this journey so that our civil rights activists can do a good job and feel that they can go to bed at night safely, because it's a heavy burden to carry. That's all I got. I acknowledge, I made you laugh.
Edward.
Passing the baton.
Come on, Edward.
Well, assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's good to be with you, and pleasure to see all of you again, especially you, Professor. So to the issue of civil rights and human rights, I mean, you know, this language is tossed around a lot by activists, and I'm not sure we always know what we mean. But just to give a brief refresher, human rights theoretically are those basic fundamental rights that every person is entitled to and already has just by virtue of being born as a human being wherever you are in the world. This is in Western thought what human rights are. So whether you're born in Zimbabwe, England, or Antarctica, you just have basic human rights. The government doesn't give you these rights. These are just rights you automatically should have. And then civil rights, of course, have a very unique meaning here in the United States. Those are the rights that you have vis-a-vis your relationship with other people in society, your right to be treated fairly and equally in relation to other people in society. And then civil liberties are the freedoms you have from government interference. The things the government cannot do to you, the freedoms you have, the government cannot take away from you. So all these things are interrelated, interconnected, but they're different things, and different activists fight for them in different ways. My organization, for example, we focus mainly on civil rights, but we also address civil liberties issues. And when we speak about international issues, we approach that from a human rights perspective, whether that's Uyghur Muslims or Palestine, et cetera. Go ahead, Professor. I think you had
I know I got my hand up because somewhere in there, it seems that blacks are left out, women are left out. I mean, we have a government who has always decided about women's bodies, not women themselves. And then we got Muslims who come along and want to decide my body, you know, and I don't want to put my body up for sale, you know, to the highest bidder here.
Bang, bang. Mm-hmm.
So what's the question, Professor?
Why are we still talking in terms that are exclusive?
So I think if you, from the perspective of civil rights, human rights, civil liberties, these terms themselves don't imply any specific gender issue or racial issue, but each of them does, if you dive into the weeds of what they address, does address issues related to people's identity. So for example, human rights, there are things within the human rights field that relate specifically to rights someone has based on their sex. If you look at civil rights, a lot of that relates to race and racial equality. Civil liberties, a lot of that relates to your personal freedoms to do what you want with your own person up to a certain point. So I don't think the terms themselves are exclusionary or exclusive to issues of race or sex or religion. In fact, these concepts are designed to protect your right to exercise your religion as you see fit, up to a point, to do what you want with your body, again, up to a point. No freedom is absolute, pretty much, to some extent, but those are what the concepts are designed to protect and address.
So what do we stand to lose, both Mona and Edward, no matter who wins?
Mona, please.
Oh, that's perfect. I think you bring up a good question, because the way I've been interpreting it, the answer is we're not losing at all, because God has a plan. And that's where, from my standpoint, as Palestinians, we've been treating this like the next Intifada, right? It feels, because Trump has given off a real Ariel Sharon vibe, like for real. We've been through this, and we also know that God always has a plan. Sometimes maybe the destruction has to be ugly for all the beauty to show up. But my faith is what I'm holding on to now. And if we have to get through another 4 years of Trump, then Allah khair, like maybe we still need a lesson. But inshallah, that we've learned our lesson. And also, I think America is showing its at real talk. Like it's behind big time with some of the play on how our elections are showcased around the world. How are we running around telling people what you know what you need to do? No, America, you need to sit down and rewrite your laws is what you need to do. You're calling everybody else underdeveloped. I think you need a little bit more developing. That's just all the answer I got.
Before I give Imam Malik the last word, Edward?
Yeah, I would say that, just from a nonpartisan perspective, I think that this election was so important for many reasons, but voting rights was one of those reasons. There was great concern that depending on how this election turned out at the local, state, federal level, you could either see efforts to advance voter suppression continue unrestrained in the coming years, or you could start to see some pushback against voter suppression efforts. So I think that's a major thing. I think religious freedom, especially religious freedom insofar as the Muslim community is concerned, I think we would have been okay with that either way, given that that is so clearly entrenched in the Constitution, and that Muslims, obviously Americans, will benefit whether you have, liberal politicians who believe in protecting religious freedom because they're very tolerant, or you have conservative politicians who believe in protecting religious freedom because they're very religious. We tend to work out, it tends to be okay either way for us in that situation. So I agree with Mona, though, that, at the end of the day, we have faith in Allah, and we have belief that, especially when it comes to religious freedom, that we're never really in danger of completely losing that we always can practice our faith one way or another, one place or another. But it's certainly easier to do it when you don't have to fight for those rights. It's accepted by the people in charge.
Well, you all have just bought yourselves I have 2 spots on my next program, since now we've got Edward to laugh, and we've got Mona to be political. And I think that Muslim Network TV has done an awesome job of bringing many voices to a conversation. And I'm going to leave the last word to our executive producer, Imam Malik Mujahid.
Well, instead of a last word, let me ask a last question before we conclude this evening. Mona, what is funny about this election?
Is that the comment by Jorge said, the way Trump had really aggressively spread out and strategically pinned and dissected the Latino vote smart enough. Right. Can you imagine if he was smart and tried doing that with the Muslim vote? Indian, that conversation versus trying to split the Muslim vote. If he had actually been smart enough, I don't think the guy's smart enough. So to me, I think it's that this whole shenanigans is funny. And it gives us such powerful material that's allowed us to look inside ourselves, because finally our president is so stupid. No jokes are working anymore. We got to start telling the truth.
Well, the concern people have is President Trump is no longer the president. What comedians gonna do?
Start educating people.
No fear. Biden, when he's awake, will give her much fodder.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Well, thank you so much, Mona, and thank you so much, Edward, for being with us. So we truly appreciate. We were hoping that you come a little earlier, but and we could talk a little more to you. But we're on the concluding side of it, and we tried for 2 hours. Votes are still there where they were when we started. So I think talking is not making a big difference. 264 for Biden and 214 for Trump. So if Biden has 6 more, he's the president, and or wins one of the 4 states left, he's going to be the president. But Trump will have to win all 4 to remain the president. So thank you, Mona, and thank you, Edward, for being with us. And thank you all for watching Muslim Network TV. We are always there 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and of course our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. And thank you so much for Shadil and Abdul Wahid and rest of our team who has put together this particular show. We are always there, so stay tuned. We'll take a short break. Thank you so much. Peace. Salam.
Walaikum salam.